Yo, what's up, everybody? How's it going? It's time for the monthly Chroma Bloom and Blight update video. So the last time, of course, we did one of these was right before the Kickstarter. And now that the Kickstarter is over, we're going to do the next one. And then the next one will be at the end of June, and then we're back to a monthly schedule, okay? Does that make sense? So right now, we're gonna do one, and then it's gonna be like about 6 weeks until the next one, and so on. So, got a bunch of stuff to talk about. First of all, some general questions, some general plans, some general skid tuning, things that you should know if you contributed to the Kickstarter. And then I want to go into kind of like the design and what's planned for the game, because there's some stuff planned for the game that I'm really excited about, that I've been working on. And then, yeah, we'll see. Anyway. Let's get some stuff out of the way first. So, this is, by the way, how I go to the Chroma Kickstarter. I never ended up kind of like creating a bookmark for it, because I feel like I would have just clicked it way too often. So I had it like, anyway, sorry, made it a bit more difficult to myself to kind of like keep my sanity. So, we have finished the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter is over, right? We had quite a few contributors, right? Over 1,200 contributors. So what's important here is that if you have pledged to the Kickstarter, we are actually currently in the process of sending out so-called surveys, which is where you can input your information for the stuff that you ordered, right, and want. So if you bought anything on the Kickstarter, then you will now be getting those things. Like you might be getting, for example, you might be getting your, what's it called? your Bebo Sip mug, right? Like the merchandise items, like that kind of stuff. For this, we of course need to know which item you want, and then also we need to know where to send it. We need your address. For this, we will be sending out surveys. You just fill that out. Please make sure to fill it out quickly. We will, depending on how long it takes, but it's probably going to be about a month where you get the chance to fill it out, maybe a bit less than that. If you do not fill it out, you don't get your shit. Okay? And there's no complaining about it afterwards, because this stuff, the merchandise items, will be printed once, and they will be printed in the exact quantity that we need, right? Because they're exclusive. There will not be any sort of backlog of them. So if you want a Bebo Sip mug, you don't fill out the survey, you wait 3 months, and then you come complaining to us that you didn't get the mug. Well, that's just too bad. At that point, you're not getting it. Okay? So please go and fill out the survey. Right? That's how you will actually get the items. You will not get the items if you do not fill out the survey. Okay? That's true for all of them, but it's especially important for the merchandise. Good. What's important to keep in mind as well, and this is kind of why I opened this, is I wanted to kind of like, if we scroll down a little bit, we've got ourselves our timeline here. So this is our timeline, right? Now, let me actually like just grab this thing really quick, and let's go. Hello, it is me. Infinity times. Yes. All right, let's go in here really quick. So this is our kind of like general timeline, right? And what's important to keep in mind here is that this was the Kickstarter, right? This was the Kickstarter period. This is now over, right? We are no longer within this period. Oh, well, rest in peace. We are no longer having a public demo available. Instead, now we are here, right? This right here. And what's important to keep in mind about this is that there is no open demo available. So the demo has actually been closed. And the demo will stay closed. The demo is done. It will not be coming back. Instead, once we are done with this closed development cycle, we will be going into the alpha. So if you bought alpha, you will get access then. Then we will be going into the beta. If you bought beta, you will be getting access then. If you bought permanent access, you will be getting access immediately, right? We will be reaching out to you, although that's not that many people did that because it was fairly expensive. Okay, cool. So that's the important thing to keep in mind there. So that's kind of like our general plan here. So what I'm going to do next here is I have a few questions that I know people had that I would like to answer. Okay, so first of all, merchandise store. Can you support Chroma anyway? Can you support it? Like, can you somehow put more money in, right? Like, maybe not right now, but in the future. So all of the merchandise items we did for the Kickstarter will never be available again. But what we are going to do is we're going to take the data that we get from Kickstarter, because it's actually like really nice for us. Because of the natural way this works out, we will end up having really good information on what merchandise items you liked, because you can freely choose which ones you want, right? That leaves us with a huge set of data about which merchandise items people wanted and liked. And then what we can do and what we will do is we will create a merchandise store with items similar to those. Again, not the exact same ones, because we promised we wouldn't do that, but we will do similar ones that will be available again. So you can get yourself some stuff there, right? We might not have a Babu Sip mug, but we might have a Blossom Gun mug. All right, I don't know. We'll see. Point being, there will be a merchandise store at some point in the future, and that will be on the Chroma website, which will be going live at some point in the future, right? Further, this is also a question I've seen people have. Clarity Games, is that a thing now? Yes, that's a thing now. We needed to come up with a name in like a day, like a week ago. Well, not a week ago, like 3 weeks ago. And we did, and it's Clarity Games, and that's the studio. That's the Chroma Game Studio, okay? That's my game studio. We're called Clarity Games. Not Thinking Bottle, not anything else. Clarity Games, that's who we are, okay? There's a website, claritygames.de. It's not very good. It will be updated, though, and it will be made better. All right, so there's that. Then, secondly, trailer stuff. I wanted to kind of talk to you about trailers. So we have a trailer right now, right? We had the announcement trailer, and I wanted to just like bring this up right now so you all know we will be re-releasing that trailer at some point in the future, probably around September, and it will then be re-released where the second part of it, the gameplay footage part of it, right, will be replaced and reworked with something that has had more time and effort put into it, as well as gameplay that is more representative of the final product, right? The gameplay that is currently in there is gameplay that is representative of the demo at that point in time, but it is not representative of the final product. Will you use Squarespace? Of course. I mean, ClarityGames.de is using Squarespace. The Chroma website is using Squarespace. Every single website I've ever made uses Squarespace. I'm not even joking, okay? Anyway. So that's kind of like, but that's important, okay? So there will be a re-release of the announcement trailer. We will also do a release trailer. That will also be a thing. Okay? So there's kind of like 2 trailers coming. One a rework and then a proper new one. Cool. On that note, something that also a lot of people have asked is, can we still do the big stretch goals? So we had like these big stretch goals where people were asking, like the roguelike game or the 4-player multiplayer, like, can you still do those? No, not right now. So the stretch goals were there to make those happen on release of the game or soon after. This is not a possibility because we just don't have enough money for them. They're very expensive. That would take a lot of money to develop. And so those kind of things might still happen at some distant point in the future, or if I somehow manage to get my hands on a huge influx of cash, right? But I'm talking about a huge influx, like $100,000. If we manage to do that, in that case, by the way, on that note, if you're interested in investing in Chroma, please reach out to me. We're open to that again. But if we get to that point, sure, absolutely. But it's not going to be, what am I saying here? It's not going to be something we can do with our current funds. I would like to do it, but I currently can't. Sorry. Again, I wish I could, but I just can't. But all of the stretch goals were basically things that I really wanted to do if we somehow get the money. But anyway, we'll see. Next things, when can I play the game again? Again, that kind of like goes to like the schedule, right? But there will probably be, if you haven't bought anything, you don't have beta access, you didn't get anything, then the earliest you will probably be able to play the game is in October. So that's quite a bit out. Sorry. But I'll be keeping you guys in the loop. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Let me show you what we have, what we are up to, right? What's going on here. Okay. Let me take you through a big chunk of design work that I did and explain it to you. And then you will see where we're going with the game or what I'm doing with it. Now we are doing game design. Okay? What's happening now is or what I will explain now is ongoing work in progress game design work that I am doing. And so not all of this is definite and set in stone. Like honestly, most of it isn't. And I just kind of wanted to explain it to you because I think it might be interesting for a lot of you to see why I'm doing things the way I'm doing and what the ideas are and how to do all of that stuff. And yeah. So basically the funding can still keep going. Well, yeah, like not crowdfunding. Now, again, if somebody's looking for an investment, I'm open to that. All right. But crowdfunding at this point in time is done. Regular funding methods, however, are not necessarily. Okay, we'll go ahead and make ourselves a quick little new layer here, which we want. So, let me go ahead and explain to you the point of what's going on here. Okay? So, when we were, like, over the past few months, you guys may have noticed that there were, like, a few moments where I was getting a little bit frustrated with people. Right? Those were... Wait, let me get this out here, like having this here. So those were the moments when people looked at the game and we're just like, oh, this is just another Hearthstone clone. Right? Like, just another Hearthstone clone. And these moments are very frustrating to me. Because if I look at this sentence, right, first of all, another. How many are there even? Second, I don't like this because this discredits the game and makes it like sound bad immediately, right? And then this to me, Hearthstone clone, this to me is just what's often used to mean card game, which is just frustrating as hell. But while this frustration is a very real one for me, I did also want to look at that and take something away from it. Because while it is, in my opinion, not true, it doesn't necessarily mean that the feedback is invalid. It's just that the feedback from people saying it's just another Hearthstone clone, the feedback that I should be taking away from this isn't that there's something fundamentally wrong with the game, but there's something wrong with the presentation. It's an issue of how the game presents itself. Because the presentation in the end is what leads to this. While this right here feels like a statement on gameplay, this is not a statement on gameplay, this is actually a statement on presentation. And that's something we can address. And in that way, I totally see it. I get it. So let's try and fix it. So one of my goals by doing this design was this right here. Rearrange the board. By rearranging the board and changing the board layout, I think we can create a feeling that will be a little bit more removed from Hearthstone. Because if we look at the board as it is right now, it clearly has similarities. Where you've got your heroes here, right? You've got your abilities, like right here, right? And then the combat clearly goes like so. And that's very obviously Hearthstone. right? And I'm not gonna lie about that. Like that was, so in my mind, what we did is we just kind of took something that worked, right? Similar to how in an FPS, the layout would be, you've got your crosshair in the middle, and then you've got your armor here, and you might have, or like, so you've got your crosshair in the middle of the screen, right? And you might have your like weapon here, and then how much ammo it has here. And you might have your like health bar up at the top. Something like that. Minimap always goes into this corner. I looked at this, right? I looked at this and I saw this. To me, it just kind of, like that is just kind of good UI. Let's just use the good UI. The problem is that doing that in this particular genre leads to that criticism that I mentioned. And that criticism is not very healthy because it's not something that people use to say, oh, this is a downside to the game. It's something that people use to discredit the game and take away from it. So let's try and fix that. So one of the goals in this design was to rearrange the board, right? In this design session page thingy here. Okay, cool. Now, there's a few more goals here though. Second, I wanted to give Chroma more identity. This is just something that I generally want to do because the game, I think, has really solid fundamentals. It has a bunch of cool, neat ideas. But there's definitely some elements in it that are still lacking in a strong feeling of this is its own game. And it feels more like, oh, this is a card game that's inspired by other card games. And while that's true, I think and while personally I don't think there's anything massively wrong with it, I think we can push it to go away from that and create more identity. So that's something I'm trying to do here. And then finally, I want to push the story theme. So what do I mean with that? In Chroma, the board, right, this right here, is actually called the story. That's because everything in Chroma is about story. This is the most important thing. The flavor of the game, everything in the game is structured around the idea of lore and context, right? These are the things, these are elements that are really important to us. And that's what I wanted to push here. Because I feel like while we currently have the board named the story and we're pushing it kind of sort of through that, and we have this kind of like story feeling a little bit, I think we can push that feeling more. We can make that a stronger emphasis. And I think by pushing into that feeling, we can like lean into the narrative elements which are strong for us, because it also works in the sense that, we want people to be attached to the heroes, so they buy merchandise and cosmetics for them, and that's how we make money, right? So leaning into the story theme seems like it could really help with that. All right. Does that all make sense? Everybody following along? Good. So keep these 3 goals here in mind, right? Keep this in mind, keep this in mind, and keep this in mind. We're gonna need all of these. Cool. Let's start with something that's a little bit easier. What I wanted to do, or what we're going to do, this is something that we're definitely doing, that is definitely happening, is we're changing the board to have so-called, here they are still called slots, they will be called cells. And I will be referring to, they're currently called cells. And I will be referring to them as cells because slots sounds bad. Just sounds kind of like a different word. And so we're gonna be using the word cells for our purposes right now. Okay? So these are called cells, even though it still says on this page slots. But anyway, what's a cell? Cell is fairly straightforward. Cells are this right here, right? Like this right here is a cell. So currently, the way the board worked before is you put something here, right? You have 1 thing on the board. If I have 2 things on the board, it's like that. If I have 3 things on the board, it's like that. If this guy dies, the rest scoots in. Right? And it's always kind of centered around this middle, right? Everything is moving into the center as you go along. The difference and the idea with cells is that instead of doing that, cells are static, right? So if I put something in this cell, it just stays here, right? It doesn't matter if I have something here. You can see these are empty. Then I can also put something in here if I want to, right? Again, doesn't really matter what's going on here, right? These are not relevant to this. So I can also put stuff in the center, of course, if I want to, right? I can put things here and here and here. But then I can also just decide I want these two over there. Fairly simple. That's the whole thing, right? Cells just make it so that things are static. Now you might be like, okay, why? What's the point? Well, it opens up design space. That's the important thing. So what this means is just like some rough ideas here, but we can have stuff like AoE. Right? Like, so I might have an ability that's like an AoE effect, or I can have permanents that occupy multiple spaces, right? I can enchant specific cells, and we actually call this blessings now. This is something that's definitely happening, where I can say, I want to bless this cell here with plus 10 attack, right? Now this, or like I want to say this cell has plus 5 attack. Now, this cell is blessed, and any creature that's inside of it gets plus 5 attack. If the creature dies, then I put something new in there. Now that also has plus 5 attack. Which is just kind of, again, it's more design space. It just gives more options for things we can do with it. Important thing about blessing, only one blessing per cell. You can't have more than one blessing per cell, because that would just be dumb, and you would just be stacking them all in one cell, and that just doesn't feel any good. Okay, cool. But again, it's just more design space, so I can restrict combat ranges. So this guy can only be cannot be attacked from the front. This guy can only be attacked from the front. You can have effects for specific board builds. So this guy gets buffed because he's next to a landmark and an enchantment and so on. Right, you get the basic idea. This is nothing too crazy. It's really just kind of like super simple. And this is definitely happening. This is 100% happening. We're having cells. Now, this immediately gives Chroma more identity, right? Like, it immediately is kind of like a thing that other games don't really have that much of. Like, I know that people are going to point out Yu-Gi-Oh! And Mythgard or whatever. I don't care. Okay, look, it's just another element that kind of goes into our direction that is not super common, and I like it. I think it works well for us. So, like, for example, an idea for a card I already had is it's this mole, like a mole, like a little, like a little rat-like creature with like big hands. Yeah, I don't know. Right? So there's your mole. This is my mole, right? And this bad boy has the ability, so it deals at the start of your turn, right? You deal 2 damage. You deal 2 damage to adjacent creatures. Deal damage 2 AoE. Right? So if I have my mole here, then its area of effect would be all of this. Like, all of these cells would be hit. And then it has an active ability to dig, right? Well, that looks like a pig. There we go, dig. And where basically it can move cells, right? So it can say, oh no, I want to be in this one, or I want to be over here. Right, and so once a turn, you can choose which cell it is in. So you can, like, if your opponent has a bunch of stuff here, or here, or here, then you can say, okay, I want to have it here, but actually, no, never mind, my opponent moved it, so I'm now scooting it over here. That makes sense? Cool. This immediately helps us with rearranging and changing the board. By putting cells on the board will immediately look different. Cool. This helps us with this goal, right? Pushing the story theme, it doesn't help with the story theme at all, but whatever. We'll deal with that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give you a warning. What I'm about to tell you is a bit more abstract, and what I mean with a bit is a lot. When I say a bit right here, I mean like a lot. It's very abstract. Okay, I'm gonna need you to bear with me, because what we're going to do is we're going to look at a problem, we're going to identify a problem, we're going to propose a solution to it, and then just treat it as if we already found the solution, as in we know what the solution is, and then just kind of keep working with the solution while we don't actually know what the solution is. It'll make sense in a second. Okay? Cool. So, we want to push the story theme, and also, again, we want to rearrange the board and give Chroma more identity. So, let's think about the story theme. So, what do we have? Well, we have heroes, right? So, heroes are pretty important to the game. They just matter. So, for example, let's kind of think about what heroes are, right? Currently, heroes are this. They are a passive, they are an active, and they are a mana pool. Well, that's pretty cool. That makes sense. Now let's think about the story thing. So stories are supposed to be told about heroes, which is the whole game. That does make sense. Heroes are also the center of those stories, which, yeah, that's about right. Right? Like they play the cards, they control the game pieces, and if a hero dies, the game is over. Cool, that makes sense. And then finally, the heroes act in the story. Like they're an active, involved part in the story. That is a thing that I felt like we aren't currently doing. Because if you think about it, okay, so the heroes, they exist. Well, they have two kind of ways to interact. They have active abilities and they have weapons, right? Now, this right here is just a creature, right? This is just a glorified creature. It's just kind of here, right? Like it's just a glorified creature, which is kind of garbage, right? I don't like it. Like weapons stink. Okay, cool. So we got that. That's a problem. And then they have an active, but like the active abilities are by design kind of weak, right? Like they have to be. And like for some heroes, it's just not used ever unless you have to, unless you got nothing else to do, which just, that doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel like they're an active part in the story. So this combination, right, this to me makes it feel as if heroes are just the deck. And you might be like, okay, well, that seems fine. But that's not what I want from heroes. Like, this is kind of where you have to say, okay, is that okay? Is that what you want from the game? In my case, no. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make the game into this kind of like story element. And as part of this story, the heroes need to be relevant, else it just doesn't really make any sense. So it doesn't work for the heroes to just be the deck, right? They can't just be the vehicle for the cards. They have to be more active than that. So this is kind of the problem. Okay, cool. Well, let's start thinking about it. One of the ideas that I had is that, well, if we want to make the active more powerful, right, we need to, we can do that. We can make the active more powerful. The problem is that makes it so that cards don't matter. Now, let me go ahead and mention something here really quick. You might have come up with different solutions to this, right? So you might be like, what about they have a special card, right? Or what about you can what about the heroes? You can just like enter play. Like heroes can enter play. So the thing is that I have already tested all of this. Special card was terrible, didn't work at all. Heroes entering play, I don't know. It was a bit problematic. Let's go ahead and keep going with what I've got. Like again, like there's a lot of stuff that I've already worked on. Literally right there, somebody just said, how about hero-specific cards? Right? Like the hero-specific card thing that doesn't work. Also doesn't feel like the hero's interacting. Feels like the hero has a card that you kind of have to play. And anyway, point being. So, we want a more powerful active effect, right? The problem is if the active is too powerful, then that means cards don't matter, right? Because if I have an active effect that's more powerful than a card, something I can use every turn that my hero has freely access to that doesn't use any resources other than mana, why would I need to play any cards at that point? And I know that's of course an extreme example, but you get the problem, right? So they need to be limited. That's an important thing here. They need to be limited. If it's not limited, it doesn't work. So, we can then kind of say, okay, well, we can say it's usable only once. Okay, cool. And let's also just kind of refer to this thing as an ultimate from now on, right? So we're going to keep talking about this idea here of this more powerful active that is limited. But I'm just going to call it an ultimate because I've played Dota for 15 years and it's an ultimate. That's what it is. All right. Okay, cool. Makes sense. Awesome. Now, the ultimate immediately has something cool, which is it gives more character to heroes, right? Because now heroes have something, boom, right? Like something that they make themselves, makes the hero. Cool, makes sense. So what is the condition? Well, the important thing with the condition is that the condition needs to be usable by all decks. It needs to be applicable in every situation. This ultimate cannot have a condition that is tied to like play 15 creatures, because what if I don't want to play a deck with creatures in it, right? I want to be very, very cautious that this doesn't make it so that I cannot have aggressive decks or control decks or anything like that. Cool. Let's go down a little bit. Let's think about the story theme. Well, we want to have a story, right? Now, what are stories? Well, a very traditional way to tell a story is in a 3-act structure, right? Where here you have your Act 1, which is introduction, decision to go on a journey, quest progression, and such in Act 2, and then Act 3, where it breaks, and so on. Point being, you have acts, right? Acts. Pretty common way to tell a story. It's not the only way to tell a story, but it's pretty common. Now, let's just kind of set aside what acts are. This is where I said, this is what I was talking about earlier, where I want you to completely ignore what is an act. I want us to only talk about the theoretical implication of acts. And I want us to figure out what exactly the acts are later. We don't need to worry about that right now. Okay? Cool? Does that make sense? Awesome. I'm glad. Let's go and scoot this a little bit in the corner. There we go. So, what is an act? Well, an act is basically a story, right? So what we could do is we could say we have 3 acts in the game. Let's just say that, right? So what would that do? Well, as we go through the game, we go through the different acts. We start in Act 1 and we end in Act 3. All right, cool, makes sense. That kind of allows for like some immediate stuff, right? So first of all, what it does is it gives us this, like, holy shit, right? Like, it gives us a lot of this. Like, if I just have a title card, right, when I start my turn, right, instead of saying turn 1, it says Act 1, turn 1, right? Or we could even go further and say Act 1, Scene 1, right? Something like that. Or we go into like Act 2, right? And then we go Act 2, turn 3. You can see how that immediately is just like pushing the story theme super hard, right? Immediately. What it also does, it gives the game more identity. And it actually also rearranges the board. Because, well, this needs to be displayed on the board somewhere. How fucking old is the version of Photoshop? It's CS5. Stop hating. I bought it when I was like 13 and in school. And I don't need you to judge me for my old Photoshop. Thank you. I don't see a reason to buy a new one because this one is perfectly good still. Anyway. So. But it immediately allows us to do all of the things that we wanted. That's kind of neat, right? Now, it also does something else, right? Remember, we had this ultimate here. Well, what we were looking for with the ultimate is a condition, which means for a condition, we need anchor points, right? So what's an anchor point? An anchor point is just something that we can refer to, right? So what I mean with that is it's something that we can look at and say, when this happens, or when something with this happens, then this other thing happens. So it might be, like if I use an example from like, I don't know, like if you're playing Counter-Strike, it might be like when my character takes damage. That would be an anchor point, right? That's something I can do. I can have a trigger on that specific moment if I want to, right? In turn-based, like in real-time games, there's a shit ton of anchor points you can have. But in turn-based games, it's a little bit more tricky because every single anchor point needs to like specifically happen, right? It needs to be specifically designed. So for example, we could say that the timer is an anchor point if you hit 550, but we don't really want that because we want people to be able to think. Make sense? But what the acts give us is they give us pretty solid anchor points. We can say, oh, we are now in Act 2, so maybe the ultimates are like an Act 2 unlock. Right. Does that make sense? So in Act 2, you get access to your ultimate, in theory. Cool, that kind of like would immediately solve a lot of the questions that we have, right? So what does this do? Well, it's good flavor. It allows for a comeback mechanism. We can just anchor it in such a way that it allows for a comeback mechanism. It allows for cool title cards, all of which is pretty awesome, right? And then cards with different effects during different acts, right? It gives the game more identity. Well, this all seems pretty good. This all seems pretty good. So what we know is that this idea of acts, even though we don't know what acts are, we do know that it helps us with a lot of the stuff we want to do, right? It helps with all of this shit, all of it. Holy damn, it helps with a lot of this. Cool. Well, let's keep pushing this then a little bit. By the way, I want to be, again, very clear that this is not like the only thought I had. It's just the one that I like the most. Right? But, yeah. So let's keep pushing this. Well, first we need to ask is, do acts happen for just the board, or do they happen for the player? So what I mean with the board is it happens for both players. The question here is essentially, if I'm in Act 2, can you be in Act 3? Or can you still be in Act 1? Can we be in different acts? For a variety of reasons, we are going to say that no, this is not the case. Instead, both players are always in the same act. So, the next thing we need to, there's a bunch of things that we need to ask about the acts. It's like, how many acts are there? How do you enter the acts? What changes between the acts? What do we even know about the acts? All right, so what we know is that in Act 1 is everything is normal. And it kind of like has a tipping point, at which point you enter Act 2. Act 2 spices things up and where you have twists and shit. And then Act 3 is the conclusion. That's where things end. Okay, cool. So I think we already learned a lot. Didn't we? Right? We learned a lot about the acts. We don't know what they are yet, but we learned a lot about them. So let's also think about this differently. We wanted to change up the board. Well, the first thing we do is we put our heroes into the corners like this, right? Instead of having the Hearthstone style, which is kind of like vertical like this, we're going to be diagonal. By being diagonal, it's immediately different, right? Like this is very different from this. Cool. Second, what we're going to do is we're going to reconsider a bunch of stuff. Right? So instead of having, so like currently a hero, right? Currently heroes have an active and a passive. This will be changed that this is ability 1 and this is ability 2. Now you might be like, what's like, you might be like what's the difference? Like, I don't get it. There is no inherent difference. It's just a different way to think about it, right? What this does is it essentially says, this doesn't have to be an active ability and this doesn't have to be a passive. They can both be passives, right? This can be a passive. This can also be an active. This can be whatever it wants to be, right? The only thing that we know is that this is ability 1 and this is ability 2. We're not locking ourselves into necessarily this being active and this being passive, right? Does that make sense? Similarly, another thing we're changing in how we think about things is we're changing weapons to equipments. So there's no longer going to be any weapons. Instead, we're going to be having equipments. What is the difference there? Nothing. Really, not with how they fundamentally work. Except that this right here always has to be, you know, some sort of sword or something, right? And this right here can be some armor. Like, why not? Right? Like, we can feel good about it being here a t-shirt. Why not? Yeah, look, that's a t-shirt. Right? The point being, it might be a magical t-shirt. Right? Like, who knows? It's like a wizard t-shirt. Oh, it's a wizard t-shirt. Point being, we're moving away from weapons, right? So, like, again, active, passive, and weapon. This is what it looked like before. And this is ability 1. This is ability 2. And this is equipment. This is more a mentality change than a mechanic change. Make sense? Cool. So, now that we know that, right, we can immediately kind of think about, like, okay, we're gonna do it diagonally, right? We know that we are rethinking how exactly the abilities and equipments and all of that stuff works. Cool. Awesome. We know that we need some sort of, like, it kind of makes sense to have this in the middle for, like, the acts. Like, whatever, how the hell the acts work, we don't know yet. So let me go ahead and take you through a bunch of ideas for acts. And, yeah, anyway, just so, yeah. So every card played and every turn that passes fills up a bar. When the bar reaches certain points, the act transitions happen. Cool. Like, that's just an idea that makes sense. Like, we could also have idea 2, taking damage and dealing damage fills up the bar instead. So it's kind of like a fighting game, right? We could also say act transitions are just a player choice. So, like, players have to push a button. But I don't know, that just feels like kind of weird. That doesn't really seem natural because, like, I feel like in stories, like, the acts kind of like they keep pushing themselves, right? The story keeps happening. It's not necessarily just because somebody pushed a button that suddenly something happened. That's just kind of stupid. I don't really like that very much. Or there's the idea that maybe, like, heroes have multiple health bars, and, like, when a hero loses one of the health bars, then act transition happens. And this is where we kind of get into what I eventually decided to do. So, this right here is like a bunch of stuff. Let's just ignore this. So here's kind of my resolution. So every card played and every turn that passes fills up a bar. This right here, I'm not entirely sure. Like, I'm still working on the details of this, but this is kind of how it is right now. When the bar reaches certain points, the act transitions happen. So every turn that passes counts for 1, and every card played also adds 1. The values here are wrong. Like, honestly, this should probably count for 3, but whatever. On top of that, heroes have 3 hearts. A heart is broken if a hero drops below a certain HP threshold. So a heart isn't any different from their health. Like, their health is just intersected into specific sections. A heart can't be recovered if a hero, even if a hero is healed above the HP threshold. So a heart is just gone after it's gone. When a heart one is broken for either player, then the game isn't in Act 2. The game automatically moves into Act 2. And if a heart, like, the same thing is true for Heart 2 and Act 3, right? So if Heart 2 is broken for either player and the game isn't in Act 3, the game automatically moves into Act 3. And if all 3 hearts are broken, the hero dies and the player loses the game. Although this is really more of a technicality because the last heart is on 0 HP. So really, it might actually just be 2 hearts that matter. Anyway, get the basic idea. So this right here, to me, makes a lot of sense with what we know about the acts, right? We want them to be pushing forward. We want them to kind of, like, feel like it's a story that's happening organically. So what this does is, like, this counter takes care of the fact that depending on how the game moves, like, if somebody plays a lot of cards or if people play no cards, then sometimes it might be moving quicker, sometimes it might be moving slower. Right? Similarly, the hearts. What these do is they make it organic. They make it a bit more, or they make it dynamic, right? And that's kind of like the big thing that we're looking for there. And we also have this act thing. Cool. So what we now need to think about is, we like the acts. Do we like the acts? I like the acts. What we need to think about is, like, what the fuck is even happening in the acts, right? So, like, there's some ideas like Act 1 heroes can enchant 1 slot, Act 2 heroes can enchant 2 slots, and 3, that's kind of lame. right? Or like Act 1 is just normal. Act 2 heroes can enchant a slot. Act 3 heroes unlock their ultimate. I don't know. Honestly, like that's kind of like, there's just a bunch of nonsense. And I didn't really like any of it. So what I did for now is I did this, right? This is what we have right now, and this is what will and this will change going forward, right? So what this is in Act 1, the game is as is right now. In Act 2, both players gain 2 N at the start of the turn. Act 3, heroes can access to a one-time ultimate. Act 3, with my internal testing, actually feels pretty good. It actually feels pretty neat. Right? That's actually kind of cool. Like, you gain access to your one-time ultimate. It makes Act 3 feel like crazy. Like, it's like, oh, fuck. You know, like, now it's getting scary. But Act 2 feels like crap. Honestly, Act 2 is garbage. I hate it. So what I started working on is what can we do about Act 2? How do we make Act 2 feel a bit more interesting? So here's this is what I was working on today, right? So what we know about Act 2 is it signifies a change in the game. It feels different from Act 2. It still feels like, it needs to still feel like a card game, and it introduces variability. These are like things we can do. Like, I think variability is actually a really strong element of the acts, where we can make it so that the game always feels a little bit different. So here's an idea that I had, okay? So when going from Act 1 to Act 2, both players choose a rule. The chosen rules then apply to both players for the rest of the game. So I might say, my rule that I choose is all creatures have +1 attack. And you might say, my rule that I choose is that both players, both players get 1 neutral mana at the start of their turn. And then those 2 rules are combined, and now they apply to the game, right? Both players choose like 1/2 of this new rule set that applies to Act 2 and Act 3 going forward. Make sense? Now, how are the rules decided? Well, the rules in this idea are based on the mana of the heroes, or the rules could be based on the heroes. So, for example, we could say that Siege Baron has 3 different rules available to him. I kind of hate that. Or we might say that the rules are based on the mana of the hero. So, like, if you have purple and green mana, then you might have access to 3 rules to choose from, like there. So the basic idea here would be, if somebody, so like, let's say we're entering from Act 1 into Act 2. This act transition would happen between turns, and then in between turns, both players at the same time select 1 rule. That rule now applies, like that combination of rules now applies for the rest of the game. And this right here is just about asking, how do we get those rules? Now, the idea that I haven't written down here yet, but the idea that I like the most right now, is that the rules are actually based on the first 3 mana of your hero, right? The first 3 mana in your mana pool. So basically, the way that I kind of envision this is that every color, and this is just an idea now, by the way, I want to be very clear, this is not set in stone, this is just like a very loose concept, right? But every color has 3 rules, right? Every color has, so like red has 3 rules, green has 3 rules, purple has 3 rules. And in that, like when you're transitioning acts, when you get to choose a rule, it is based upon the first 3 colors your hero has selected, which rules are given to you, which options are given to you. Meaning you're given 1 rule at random for each color. So let's say I select 3. So in this case, I would be pretty inconsistent, right? Because I would now be given a random green out of 3, a random red out of 3, and a random purple out of 3. But if I want to instead lay out my mana curve like this, where I say, okay, I want 3 purple, now I'm always given all 3 options that purple has available. Is this making sense? So I hope this is making sense. So the idea of this would be that it kind of like, it reflects the mana that you have selected. It reflects how you've built your deck in a way. And it would introduce some variability. I'm not sure how I feel about the randomness factor of it, but I don't know, it would require some testing. I still need to figure that stuff out. But the cool thing about that is we could have the rules change per season. So if we have, like every new expansion or something like that, there would also be a new set of rules introduced for each color. Right? So you kind of get what I mean? That was the idea there. Okay, so now we've talked a lot about a bunch of stuff. Let me go ahead and dig into Discord really quick. And okay, wait, I gotta go dig something out really quick. Where is it? Okay. Sorry, I'm looking for something. Oh, there it is. Okay. So the last thing I want to show you now is, and by the way, this might be a bit unsatisfying and a bit of an unsatisfying way to end this. But this is it. Sorry. On all of the like acts and rules and all of that stuff, we're just done with that now.
This is
hey,
my stream.
Nimad.
I've tuned into BTW. Would love more game design.
Hey,
streams.
Nimad. Thank you very much for the 3 months. Well, I'll be recording some stuff of it like this again, I think, in the future. Anyway, but yeah, this is just done now because it's not finished, right? I'm still working on this. The last thing I want to show you here is what our new board layout is like. So this is Mustafa, our UI designer, made this, right? So you can see here the heroes are now in the corner. This right here would be the hearts, as mentioned. Oops. These right here would be the hearts. Let me go to make a new layer so I can actually paint on top of this. You've got your abilities here. You've got your ultimate there. This space is currently empty, but we were planning to fill that with cosmetics, so we could fill that with, again, the rules, which seems like a good way to do it. Then you've got your act counter here. You've got your end turn and all of that stuff over there. And then the mana is kind of curved like this in this corner, where here is where your ashes are, and the deck is just in the corner down there. So yeah, this would be the newly reworked board. And I think if people see this, they won't think Hearthstone anymore, will they? I mean, honestly, if people look at this shit and then say Hearthstone, oh, it's just another Hearthstone clone, I'm just giving the fuck up, honestly. At that point, I'm just surrendering, right? Like, so on the other side, this right here would be ability 1, we've got ability 2, we've got the ultimate, and this right here is the equipment slot. Anyway, that's the plan. Game design. Game design. All right, we feeling good about everything? We feeling like we get it? Is that everybody, did any of this make sense to anybody? So yeah. So we already... Why did you change the mana from right to left? Well, because, like, honestly, to us, it felt like when we were thinking about where do we put our hero, it just felt really natural to put the hero on this corner, right? Like, it felt really natural for the hero to be in the bottom left corner, and then for the opponent hero to be in the top right corner. So, but then we wanted to kind of like have everything nice and condensed around the hero, so that meant the mana had to go over there. But anyway, then we go again diagonal here. We've got ourselves the cells and shit. Do you now see? Like, isn't that sick? Do you like? Come on, you can't tell me you don't like that. This is so cool. I'm so excited for this shit, honestly. Is this not the sickest thing you've ever heard? I love it. I think it's super, super cool. I'm really excited for it. Yeah, anyway, so that's the plan. we're working on this. Next update will be at the end of June. Hopefully we'll be able to show you a bunch of stuff by then. Okay. No, that's pretty much that. Let me go ahead and make sure I remove this screen cap out of here, because I don't like having that screen cap there. Yeah, that's it. So that's what I wanted to tell you about. That's what I wanted to show you. That's the plans for Chroma. That's the design I've been working on. I still need to figure out the details of the acts, but I like the acts a lot. I'm not sure if I want it to be too random. It kind of comes down to like what it ends up feeling like, right? Like what I want it to feel like is I wanted to like, ideally I want it to feel variable, but I want it to feel like, oh, okay, so this is the environment we're playing this game in. All right, that's cool. I can make that work. I don't want it to feel like, oh, well, I didn't get the rule I wanted. Well, I guess I lost, right? I guess if you build your deck like that, then you build your deck badly, but we got to figure it out. Anyway, that's it. I'm done. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next month sometime. Well, I mean, I'll see you guys tomorrow, but I'll do another one of these next month where I'll like talk about all of the details. And then I can show you the progress on the stuff we've made. Like again, like right now, we just need to develop it. I don't have any in-game footage of this because it's in the middle of development. Like, I guess I could show you the act system. The act system is actually already in game, but it's wacky and doesn't work properly. Well, it works properly. That's not true. It does work properly. But it's whack as shit because it's not done yet. Okay, it's not done yet. I'll see you guys around. Goodbye.